The champagne hadn't even been uncorked when the insults started flying. I hadn't been at my sister Caroline's wedding for more than 15 minutes, and already my parents were glaring at me like I'd brought shame to the family just by existing. I stood there, in the corner of the hall, wearing a modest dress I paid for myself, watching my mother fuss over my sister's train while whispering to my father behind a forced smile. I knew what it was about, my refusal. 2 weeks before the wedding, my parents sat me down with the kind of seriousness that usually came with bad medical news. But this wasn't life or death. This was them demanding I sell my car, a car I had saved for years to buy, to help fund my sister's over-the-top wedding. My dad said, "She deserves the best day of her life." My mom added, "You'll never be a bride, so at least help the one who will be." The cruelty in her voice wasn't even disguised. I said no, not out of spite, but because that car was the one piece of independence I had. After years of being overlooked, belittled, and treated as a backup plan to Caroline's every dream, that car was my own personal symbol of freedom. I paid for it myself. I maintained it myself, and I wasn't about to sacrifice it so my sister could have golden centerpieces or a second gown for her reveal moment. That decision turned me into the family's villain. The night before the wedding, I caught my sister telling her bridesmaids that I was a bitter, broke brat who couldn't stand to see her shine. My mother called me ungrateful. My father said, "You owe this family everything." And that's when it hit me. I didn't owe them anything. All my life, I had been the one to sacrifice. I skipped college to help with the family business. I gave up vacations so my sister could go to Europe. I stayed home while she was celebrated. And now they wanted my car, my last shred of self-worth, for her happiness? Number. So I showed up at the wedding knowing I wasn't welcome. My name wasn't on the seating chart. I was given a plastic chair near the kitchen doors. People avoided eye contact. My aunt smiled tightly and said, "At least you're here." And when the music started and the bride descended the staircase in a custom-designed gown with pearls sewn by hand, I felt something shift inside me. Not envy, not rage, but clarity. The speeches were painful. My father toasted our shining star Caroline, who always puts others first. My mother cried about how family is about sacrifice. Everyone clapped. Everyone smiled. Except me. Then came the moment that broke me. During the family photo session, I was asked to step aside. "Just immediate family," the photographer said gently. I looked at my mom. She didn't even flinch. I looked at my dad. He nodded toward the buffet table as if telling me to go away. I stood there, humiliated, until my sister walked by, smirked, and said under her breath, "Maybe if you had sold that stupid car, you'd be in the photo." And that's when it happened. I don't know what snapped in me, but something did. All the years of being treated like a background character in my own life came crashing forward. And in that moment, I realized I had one thing they wanted, one thing they all underestimated, and I was going to use it. But I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I simply turned around, walked to my car parked blocks away because they didn't allow me valet, and drove home with a smile. I knew exactly what I was going to do. I didn't sleep that night. I stayed up with the city lights flickering through my window and the weight of every insult, every exclusion, and every second of that wedding sitting like fire under my skin. They had humiliated me publicly, treated me like help at my own sister's celebration, and tried to rip away the only thing I owned of value. But they didn't know. While they had spent their lives counting on me to be their doormat, I had quietly built something of my own. What they didn't know was that while they were busy mocking me for just having a car, I had turned that car into income. I'd been doing contract deliveries, rideshare, and courier work, and with that money, I'd started investing. 2 years ago, I bought and flipped my first antique. Then a second. I joined online auctions. Then I started buying and reselling heirlooms, some rare, some barely dust-worthy, to antique dealers and collectors. I didn't advertise it to my family because I knew how quickly they'd find a way to leech off my efforts. But the real surprise? A few months ago, I bought something else, something deeply personal. I had acquired, legally and fully, the deed to a small storage facility just outside of town, a facility that, by sheer coincidence, contained my parents' prized possessions, vintage furniture, family heirlooms, rare china, and a few supposedly irreplaceable antiques passed down through generations. They had kept it there for safety and lower rates, never realizing the original owner had defaulted on the land and listed it for silent auction. I was the silent buyer. For months, I'd paid the fees without touching a thing. But after what they pulled at the wedding, I drove straight to that storage facility the morning after and unlocked what was now legally mine. The first thing I touched was the oak jewelry chest, my mother's pride. Inside were vintage brooches, a wedding hair comb she claimed should only belong to real brides, and an engraved locket she refused to let me wear to prom because I hadn't earned it. Every item was carefully photographed, appraised, and listed for sale. By noon, the entire contents of their unit were in motion. The most expensive pieces went to collectors in Italy and Spain. A rare desk my father bragged about, sold. The embroidered armchair they never let anyone sit on? Gone in 3 hours. And just for poetry? I sold the silverware set they refused to let me touch during holiday dinners for a private dinner of my own at the city's best rooftop restaurant. 2 days later, my phone rang. My mother. I let it go to voicemail. Her voice trembled. "The storage unit, it's empty. Did they rob us? The police say there's no break-in. What's happening? Call me." I didn't. Instead, I sent them a screenshot of the deed transfer with my name at the top, and one line typed beneath it. "Consider this repayment for my car, my pride, and your cruelty." That evening, I blocked their numbers. But the story didn't end there. At first, they tried to guilt me through extended relatives. I received a long message from my aunt claiming I had disrespected the family legacy. My cousin called me cold and vengeful. And my father, after days of silence, sent me a single email. "You went too far. You're not part of this family anymore." But here's the thing. They had made that clear long before I ever lifted a finger. And while they were busy mourning their antique chairs, I was taking meetings. A local historian had caught wind of my collection and offered me a surprising proposal to curate a public exhibit using several of the heirlooms I now owned. Not out of spite, but to tell my side of the family story. I named it, The Forgotten Daughter, Stories That Never Made It to the Mantle. The exhibit opened on a cloudy Saturday afternoon. I didn't expect many to come, maybe a few curious locals, some history buffs. But by evening, the gallery space was full. People walked past the glass displays, stopping at every item with carefully written plaques beneath them. Each piece was more than an antique. It was a story. The locket my mother once refused to let me wear had a small card beneath it. Worn by no one, because some daughters, no matter how well behaved, are never considered worthy. The armchair my parents guarded like gold? The plaque read, "Reserved for the important ones," until the forgotten one took her seat. People read, they stared, some cried. A local reporter asked if I'd be willing to do an interview. I agreed, but not to trash my parents. I told the truth. That I was the daughter who stayed silent too long. That being excluded didn't break me. It forced me to build something of my own. The interview went viral in our town. I didn't send my parents the article. They saw it anyway. A week later, my father showed up at the gallery, alone. I was at the far end, adjusting lighting on a display. We locked eyes. I didn't move. He walked slowly, glancing around at the objects he once held so tightly. He finally stopped at the old silver candlesticks, then turned to me. His voice cracked. "You've made your point." I looked at him, calm and steady. "I wasn't trying to make a point," I said. "I was reclaiming the story you never let me tell." He opened his mouth again, like he wanted to say something more. But no apology came. Just silence. I didn't need it anymore. I turned back to my display. That night, I walked home feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Not revenge, not triumph, but freedom. I used to think I needed my parents to recognize my worth, but I realized the recognition I had been chasing wasn't theirs. It was my own. Weeks passed, The exhibit was extended twice. Strangers sent letters. One woman wrote, "Thank you for showing me I'm not the only daughter left out of family pictures." Another note, scrawled by hand, simply read, "They tried to erase you. Instead, you carved your name into history." I framed that one and hung it above my desk, right next to the first royalty check from the exhibit. It was more than my parents ever gave me, more than they ever believed I could earn. And it was signed in my name, the same name they once tried to leave out, the same name that now filled the room.